This week, Conflict Zone is in Paris to meet Corinne Narassiguin, Speaker of the French Socialist Party. The Socialist candidate is poised for a crushing defeat at the ballots in late April. Is this the end of the French Socialist Party? Corinne Narassiguin, welcome to Conflict Zone. The Socialists came to power promising change. You promised to reduce the gap between the poor and the rich. You didn't deliver.
That's not true. We did inherit a very difficult situation, and we did have to first try to reduce the budget crisis and reinvigorate our industry. So this necessitated reforms that were long-term reforms. But we did reduce poverty. We did increase all of the social welfare minimums. What we have to see is that we have, contrary to Germany, for example, we have a population that is increasing in demography, right? We have many more hundreds of thousands of young people who arrive on the job market every year. In every
so
country
you have young people who are joining the market and are looking for jobs. So this is really not very special a French phenomenon.
Well, no, because the demography is increasing, which means that in order to reduce unemployment rate, the unemployment rate, we have to create a lot more jobs than, for example, in Germany. Because in Germany, you have less people arriving on the job market every year.
It's a very interesting way to explain a failure.
I'm just saying...
So let us speak about the older one. Let us speak about the older one.
It is not satisfactory. We're not satisfied with the results. I'm not saying we're satisfied with the results. I'm saying that it was a very difficult situation, that there are still a lot more things that we can do.
But you promised a lot. You promised to the French people.
No, we didn't. We promised that
we are taking over the government. We will reduce unemployment. Under Hollande, unemployment has stayed above 10%. I mean, this is a failure.
We did reduce the poverty gap. That is a fact. And we also worked at rebuilding our industry. And these are results that, unfortunately, will take years to show.
But we agree that unemployment is a very objective number. Hollande became the first socialist president in power.
If you want to talk about failure, there is a failure on unemployment. But when it comes to rebuilding the foundation, rebuilding the foundation of our economy, so that we can reduce unemployment in the future. In the next few years, I think the next president will benefit from the reforms that we did.
This is an expectation. This is not proved. Again, Hollande became the first socialist president in power in 17 years. And when I remember the campaign, unemployment was one of the most critical issues, and nothing changed.
No, you cannot say that nothing changed, because you can see the trend is different. We did see the reason why the unemployment rate is about the same now as it was 5 years ago is because it did increase during the first couple of years.
10% today.
And unemployment rate did increase during the first couple of years. But for the last about a year and a half to 2 years, we've had a job creation that is higher than job loss, which is a switch in the trend. And so what we're seeing now is we've engaged France on the trend towards unemployment rate going down, towards job creation increasing, which changed the trends that we were in for the previous 10 years.
So let's talk about another trend. One of the highest unemployment is in the banlieues, the suburbs, like in Paris, where in some places it is set above 40%. One lost generation after the other, even when socialists are in government.
This is where the situation was the worst to begin with.
It's still 40%.
And it is the the situation also in overseas territories is also very
Let us speak
overseas
about
territories
France.
is also very difficult.
Let us speak about
France
Paris
too.
suburbs.
But yes,
40% unemployment, a young generation,
yes,
a lost generation,
yes, this is
another
why,
one.
No, well, this is why we've also put a lot of effort into our policies for the suburbs, for the cities. But this also, the problem is today we have expectations that are very high, which is normal, but on a very short term. And unfortunately, sometimes when the situation is so difficult, the policies that we need to conduct are long-term policies that cannot produce results within a few years. And it's true that probably we set the expectations too high. But I think we've invested a lot in the suburbs. We've invested a lot in education.
Argument.
We've invested a lot in professional training.
Not enough. I understand your argument. You're saying we need more time.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, you didn't do enough, didn't you? Did you enough?
We did.
I mean, it's still 40%. Nothing changed. The structures didn't change in the banlieues. The problems didn't change. The conflicts didn't change. The violence didn't change.
No,
and you are the left party with integration case.
No,
I
cannot accept you saying that nothing changed. Probably things didn't change fast enough, certainly. But you cannot say that nothing changed.
So what is between not enough and nothing changed?
We impulsed changes that are taking time to produce those results. It's in the suburbs, the problem is very complex. You cannot act on one single lever. Otherwise people would have solved the problem long ago. This is today a different time.
The post-colonization time in France, and that nobody really took this as serious as it has to be?
Well, I think it's true that we have been lacking over the decades in France in general. I'm not saying left or right. I think the government went after the other. The governments went after the other. We've been lacking in our attention to the integration issues with the second, third generation of immigration post-colonization. Because I think, contrary to other waves of immigration in the past in France, coming from Europe, we've underestimated the issue of racism, I think.
You didn't care? What does it mean, underestimation? All these problems were viewed every day. You had only to go to the banlieues and you knew what was going on there.
Because well, of course we knew what was going on, but the root of the problem is much more complex than, for example, the integration in the past of Spanish immigrants or Italian immigrants.
These were no immigrants. These were French people from your colony, your former colony.
But the problem is, because there is still an ingrained problem of racism in the country that we did not want to see, which we can see now with the rise of the Front National, for example.
The Front National was also successful 20, 15 years ago. They were in the presidential against Chirac. It's not the first time that the French population is helping the candidate from the Front National to be a candidate for the presidency in the first way.
Well, when Jean-Marie Le Pen got to the second round of the election in 2002, it was a shock to everyone. Today, it's not a shock that the Front National is so high. This is what has changed in the country. This is very different. We're in a very different situation. And we can see this rise of xenophobia and racism and populism and nationalism in other countries in Europe too.
But a lot of these young people we are speaking about are French Muslims. Did you fail in the integration?
I think, yes, I will say that. I will concede that. This is an area where the question of how we treat Islam in the country has been an issue, and because this has compounded the problem in the suburbs, including the economic problems in the suburbs, because we've had a far right and a right wing party that stigmatized.
Tell me some of the biggest mistakes in France. towards the Muslim population?
For example, I think we did not do enough after the first time that we were touched by terrorism, Islamist jihadist terrorism in the 90s in France. We did not do enough after that to make sure that Islam is fully integrated in the country as a normal religion.
But it was not before. This didn't happen with the terror acts. Islam was not enough integrated in France before.
Yes, but I'm not going to talk about the 70s and the 80s.
So what do you
right?
think you will have to do in the future?
I think...
what are the measures?
I think we have been working, Bernard Cazeneuve has been very good when he was Minister of the Interior and now Prime Minister, working with the Muslim community in France towards recognizing an Islam of France and recognizing what Islam means in this country, what the Muslim culture has brought to this country, and making sure that within our Republican framework of laïcité, of secularism, French secularism, Islam finds its place fully.
Let me quote, as I read, the spokeswoman for the Collective Against Islamophobia in France. She accused your party, the Socialist Party, the government, your government, emphasizes on the fact that Islam is the problem and Muslim people do not respect the Republic and its values. It's a system of creating a scapegoat for the society. El-Sarraj is accusing the Socialist Party and the Socialist government of playing with racist thinkings.
I know this collective very well. They have a definition. They tend to. They can sometimes be part of the problem because sometimes they. How should I put this? They exaggerate some of the issues because they like to exist mediatically with these type of.
This is your answer, your reaction to this criticism?
I'm talking about this collective specifically, right? This. I know how they function, and they have a definition of secularism which is not the French definition of secularism. They want to move France towards a relationship between politics and between the state and religion that is closer to what we see in the United States, which is a country that I know very well. And so it's they are trying to create communitarism around the Muslim religion in France. So they're not very reliable.
So let me quote somebody else. An important French politician said, quote, "Islam is certainly a problem. It is dangerous not itself, but when it wants to affirm itself as a religion in the Republic.
Yes.
It could be a problem when the Muslims behave in an anti-republican manner." Who do you think made this remark? Islam is certainly a problem.
I think it's Manuel Valls.
No, it's your president.
Oh, it's François Hollande. Yes, okay.
It's Monsieur Hollande.
Yes.
Do you think that this remark helps in integration, credibility, and?
Yeah, I think even a lot of French people of Muslim culture or Muslim faith are saying this too, right? Because we have a very strict definition of what separation of church and of religion and state is in France. We have a very strict definition of laïcité. And I was very hard on the Catholics when they were against gay marriage and trying to use religious arguments in the political debate. And for the same reason, I can be very strong also on Muslim people, Muslim French people, who are trying to change the law to make it conform to Islamic rule. That's not what the Republic is.
You mentioned Catholics. We talked about Muslims. Mm-hmm. There are some more groups in France, but President Hollande, that's perhaps a result of all of that, has now a 70% disapproval rate, and only 4% say that they are satisfied with the president's performance. It can't get any worse for a politician and his party.
I think history will. François Hollande is not candidate for the
party,
next election.
He represents the Socialist Party.
Yes, but
it can't get any worse. Also for your party, your candidate is after the polls of this week around 8%. He's even not a quantité négligeable anymore in this campaign.
Well, I think we'll see what the Socialist Party does in the parliamentary election after the presidential election.
We are speaking now about the Socialist Party's representative. Yes. He has around 8%.
Yes.
I mean, he's out of the game. And the president is socialist. The government is a socialist one. Yes. I mean, it can't get any worse.
We are in a very bad situation. Yes, it's true. But I think this is a problem for a lot of old parties and governing parties in France today. We are going through a political crisis, and we do have to reinvent ourselves. We will have to reinvent ourselves after the elections.
In history of France, that a candidate
I think we are in a very specific time. We are in a very unusual time. I think this election reflects that. I think this is a very crazy election. This is for the very first time. It's possible that none of the major parties will have a candidate. Major left, right, or left wing or right wing party will have a candidate in the second round of the election. The Socialist Party
is less popular than the Front National. In 2012, the Socialists won with 51% of the votes, and now you cannot even reach 10% according to the polls. This is an admission of failure.
No party will have a majority in France for a very long time, I think. So we do have a problem with the left in general, which is very fractured.
But the left has not a problem. There is a candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He is the representative of politics with left.
I think he's a very charismatic person, who's true capturing right now an electorate that, and including a socialist electorate that's a little lost right now. But I'm not sure that on the long run, and especially with the parliamentary election, that we will see the same level for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Because I think it's this person that attracts. If you remove Jean-Luc Mélenchon from his party, there's nothing left. If you remove whatever he is at the head of the party today, people still know what the socialists are.
People doesn't believe that there's something left with the socialists.
I just told you, we do have to reinvent ourselves, I think, but we can't do this during the campaign.
You reinvented you a few times during these few years.
No,
you were very left from the beginning on. 75% income taxes. Then you changed.
That was the only one.
Then you changed
No,
and
that's
then
not
you changed again.
That's not true. I mean, if you the 75% tax measure was the only really radical left measure that was proposed and done by François Hollande. If you look at his platform in 2012, it was a very social democratic platform. It was a very center-left platform. And this is how it governed. This is how it governed. No.
In February of 2016, the socialist government attempted and ultimately failed a reform of the labor code. The reform in its original draft included easier way for companies to fire workers, reduction in overtime payment, and reduction of severance packages. I mean, this is a left policy.
This is a flawed interpretation of what was in the law, and this is not what was voted at the end.
Okay,
either.
so I will ask you: Did you decide that it will be easier than it was before to fire workers? Yes or not? Yes or not?
No.
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 Did you reduce overtime payment? Yes or no?
It was about the possibility of doing this in social negotiations, which is at the level of the enterprise.
It was impossible before.
It was possible before. No, it was already possible before. It was already possible before.
With the reduction in overtime
It was already
payments?
possible before with a 30% union vote, and we wanted to put at the branch level, and we wanted to push it to 50% union vote at the enterprise level. So it was already possible before. We just made it. We just increased the capacity of the unions in intervening in making these decisions.
And what's about the reduction in overtime payment? This is a left policy. And what's about?
No, this is what I'm talking about overtime and about overtime payment. The negotiation, we wanted them to be at the level of the company at the level of the enterprise instead of being at the branch.
1.2 million French people protested against these measures.
Yes.
Hollande and Prime Minister Valls seemed not to be impressed by it. They accuse you that this is not anymore left policy.
I think I will stand by the fact that these are social democratic reforms. This is a social democratic reform. This was about...
Are you socialists or social democrats?
I am both.
You are now both, but 5 years ago you were both also?
I've always been both. Yes, François Hollande also said he's a social democrat.
So you copied Gerhard Schröder?
Oh, well, if you want to make that parallel, I think...
I ask you.
I think, no, I think it's a different time and it's a different country. And then but there are similarities in the sense that I think François Hollande made a lot of reforms that were very hard to make, that were very unpopular, it's true. Maybe because also we weren't very good at explaining them and at negotiating them up front. That's true. But I think just like Angela Merkel has benefited a lot from the reforms that Gerhard Schröder put in place in Germany, I think whoever is the next president will benefit a lot from the reforms that François Hollande put in place in France.
Reforms were rammed through the National Assembly against the wishes of the opposition and many of your own representatives and senators. Was this the beginning of the end of your party? You obliged the country to accept something that the majority didn't want to have?
Actually, I think if you look at the detail of what we've done, if you ask people in the polls, measure by measure, most of the time they agree with what we've done. If we don't tell them that that's what we've done, so there's been some level of irrationality in how
so the
this
voters
president
didn't understand you.
No, because the results were not visible, and I understand that.
71% of French who found the maneuver shocking. You didn't have the majority for all that. You have disappointed your voters.
We have disappointed the voters. That's true. That's true because because people don't feel the results in their daily lives strongly enough. I think this is changing a little bit now. I think people are starting to see some improvements, and we'll see what they say in a few months. I think possibly, especially when we see what's happening in the presidential election right now and who might come out of it, I would take the bet that François Hollande will be a very regretted president in just a short few months.
But let's speak about another example of this President Hollande and his credibility. In 2012, he said that the financial sector was his main enemy. But when Britain chose to leave the EU, he was quick to offer the banks tax breaks to attract some of them to come to Paris from London.
Yes,
hypocrisy. What hypocrisy?
No.
If the financial sector is the main enemy, why France invites the financial sector and say, come into my country, my main enemy?
That's not what he said. He said the faceless financial sector, right? The one that speculates, the one that was responsible for the 2008 financial crisis. But we do need finances, obviously. Who is going to finance the economy?
In London are these bankers, are these banks.
Yes, and
so you invited them.
Yes, but we've worked at separating high-risk speculating finance from regular banking, right? This is what the issue was, really, is the fact that normal people were paying for high-risk speculators when they make mistakes. And so we separated the activities of highly speculating financiers from the normal banking system. We've also done that. We've also worked at doing that at the European level with the banking union directive. And we do, obviously, need to have a place where we can trade.
What is your feeling?
Yes.
If you take in consideration France 2017, Front National and Le Pen, a third of the voters wants to give their vote, and even not anymore 10% for your party. What changed in France?
Well, just as I said before, I think we've seen a rise in populism, in simplistic ideas, in nationalism, in France, just like we've seen it in other European countries. So I think this is, and we've seen it in the United States with Donald Trump's election. So this is, I think, a reflection that all of the democratic parties must have. And I think the left has fractured in France. And this is very worrying, that we have to find a way to unite the left again. And we do have to find a way to reinvent the Socialist Party.
Corinne Narassiguin, thank you very much for being on Conflict Zone. Thank you very much. Thank you.